what does a pipeline have to do with Ukraine? Because that's not immediately evident to someone who is analyzing it and thinking through it.
Well, I remember I had this thought when you brought it up, Senator, and we've talked about it a little bit on this show, but I would like, because things seem to be coming to a head, so I do want to be able to understand this. But I think there's this question of, as Barack Obama said, why do I care if Russia exerts influence in its traditional sphere of influence? What do I care about Ukraine? I don't know anything. Most people, as you point out, probably don't even know where Ukraine is on a map. And what does it have to do with this pipeline? I guess I care about pipelines because I care when gas goes through the roof like it is doing right now. But where is the interest for the average American citizen?
So Vladimir Putin is a bully. He's a thug. He's a tyrant. He commits murder and torture and lies and oppression on a regular basis. And he wants to dominate his neighbors. He wants to rebuild the Soviet Union. Now, look, we spent decades fighting a Cold War. The Soviet Union was a very dangerous adversary. It's not in America's interest to see Putin rebuild the Soviet Union. It's not in America's interest to see an enemy who wants to defeat us get stronger and more powerful. When it comes to energy, there's a second component of it, which is that Putin uses energy to blackmail Europe, to force Europe to do what he wants. And you know, there's a phrase that John McCain used to use that I think is a really apt phrase, which is that Russia is a gas station with a country attached, which is the source of Putin's money that he uses to pay his army, to buy his tanks, to buy his missiles, to develop the nuclear weapons he has pointed at you right now in Nashville, pointed at every major country in America. The source of that money is energy, selling oil and gas. Now, 2014 was the last time Putin invaded Ukraine, and he invaded a section of Ukraine called Crimea, but then he stopped. He didn't go all the way into Ukraine. He didn't invade the entire country. He didn't go into the capital, which, you know, the capital, everyone used to pronounce it Kiev, and now it's considered, I guess, more enlightened to pronounce it Kyiv.
So I have to refer to one of my favorite dinners as chicken Kyiv.
Apparently.
Not chicken Kiev.
Right. Apparently, whether it's one syllable or two, I will leave that to the linguists. But the reason he didn't march into all of Ukraine is right now the principal route that Russia uses to get its natural gas to Europe is going through Ukraine, is pipelines that go right through the middle of Ukraine. And Ukraine makes a bunch of money on these pipelines because it's how they send Russian gas to Europe to heat their homes, to provide energy for their homes. And
right.
So Putin faced the risk if he sent tanks into the heart of Ukraine, if he invaded Kiev, that those pipelines could be destroyed, that they could lose their ability to get their gas to market, and it protected Ukraine's safety and security. So what did Putin do in response? Well, the very next year, 2015, is when he began building the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And basically what he said is, all right, I don't want to have to go through Ukraine to get my gas to Europe, so let's build a pipeline that goes underwater and goes directly from Russia to Germany, that cuts Ukraine out of the process, so then we can march into Ukraine and they can't do a damn thing about it. Well, he began building that pipeline. It took a lot of time. As we got to 2019, the pipeline was nearly complete. And I have been the leading voice, the leading actor in the Senate to stop this pipeline, because this pipeline, if built, if online, gives Putin billions of dollars to attack Americans, attack our allies. I want Putin weak, and I want him not aggressive and hostile. So in the summer of 2019, I introduced legislation in the Senate to sanction the companies that were building Nord Stream 2. It was bipartisan legislation. I brought together Republicans, Democrats, passed it through the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, passed it through the entire Senate, passed it through the entire Congress, and President Trump signed it into law. Now, here's something amazing, Michael. They were building the pipeline. They were actively rushing, trying to complete the pipeline. It was about 90% complete. When President Trump signed the sanctions into law, they stopped building the pipeline that day, not the next day, not a week later, not a month later, the day the sanctions were signed into law. And they were designed because they would have bankrupted any company that continued to build the pipeline. So what happens next? This is December of 2019. The pipeline lays dormant for over a year. By the way, one of the talking points today is, well, it was 90% done. It was 90% done. Well, that's true. But a 90% done pipeline is 0% done. It doesn't work till you connect both ends and turn it on.
Unless the oil is going to jump out and make it that last 10%, then it's useless.
Yep. So for over a year, we had defeated this pipeline. We had won. It was a massive bipartisan victory over Russia. It was a victory for Europe. It was a victory for Ukraine. And it was a victory for America. Then Joe Biden comes to office. And the Biden foreign policy team, number one, their view towards bullies and enemies of America is weakness towards the Taliban in Afghanistan, weakness towards the Chinese communists, weakness towards Iran, and weakness towards Russia. But number two, they really elevate Germany in their foreign policy. I've joked that the Biden foreign policy team has votive candles of Angela Merkel under their beds at night. That they just they worship Merkel for whatever reason, and Germany wants the pipeline. So Biden reversed course and surrendered on these sanctions. And here it's really quite amazing. The pipeline is stopped the day Trump signs the sanctions in December of 2019. Joe Biden is sworn into office January 20th, 2021. Do you know what day Putin begins building the pipeline again?
What day?
January 24th, 2021. 4 days after Biden puts his hand on the Bible, Putin begins building the pipeline.
What you've drawn here that I did not appreciate before. Obviously I understood there's some connection here between this pipeline and what Russia's doing in Ukraine. But the pipeline is a symbol. It's a physical representation of the imperial ambitions of Vladimir Putin. The whole point of the pipeline, other than saving a little bit of money, I guess, is to free up Russia to go pursue whatever imperial ambitions it has in Ukraine. So you kill the pipeline, you kill or at least seriously dampen the imperial ambitions. And if you give the okay on the pipeline, you are tacitly giving the okay on Russia going into Ukraine.
Because the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that